Hey, Stu from UAVfutures here, and today we're going to be looking at this. Now this is the K5, this is the Kraken, and I know this has been a long time coming. So you notice it is all built up, which is not usually the way that I start my reviews currently. Now this isn't going to be your normal type of video because I've had this thing for quite a while, and I filmed different parts and different pieces sort of all over the place. So it's going to be a bit chaotic. So what I think I am going to do, I'm going to just stick it on the bench as it is, and we'll give it a bit of an overview and a review, and then take it out and give it a bit of a test fly, because that's what this one is all about. It is designed to be like a hardcore racing frame. Now it does look totally different. You're going to notice that straight off the bat. And I also want to give a bit of a shout out to BoltRC, because they sent me this frame quite a while ago, actually a number of months ago, and I really do try my best to sort of get the products on the bench and get the video done. But this was one, some little issues came up and we waited for some other parts and those sort of things. So this video has been a long time coming. Anyway, let's stop wasting any more time. Let's stick it on the bench, have a look at how it comes, or I guess have a look at how I've built it, and then we'll take it out, and what you all want to see, we'll get a bit of flight footage. Alright, let's get started. Alrighty, so here it is on the bench, and I know this is very rare for me to sort of start off with a built quad, but yeah, like I explained, this one is going to be a little bit of a different video. So while it's all built up, let's stick it on the scale straight away, because this thing is meant to be a racing frame. So let's stick it on here and see how much the build is coming in at. Alright, so it's coming in at 305 grams, ready to rock and roll. So I think around the 300 gram mark is probably what an accurate estimation of this frame is going to be. Now this is the K5, so it's designed to spin some 5-inch props right here, and there's also a K6 version out there which is built significantly different than this one. So but I've got the K5 here, so designed to spin up some 5-inch props. Now this frame does come with 4 separate arms, so it does come in some pieces right here. It is not a unibody frame, but the K6 is actually a unibody frame. So that's sort of one thing I wonder is, why didn't they make this one piece, or because it's sort of the price it seems like for one piece, because I think this quad is a little bit expensive for what you get in terms of the carbon cutout, because I think it should be a little bit cheaper, especially considering that it's just these 4 arms right here that all go together. Anyway, so it's designed, these arms are designed to spin some 22 size motors, so I've got some 2205 Emax motors on here, and I think I really recommend people put the 2300 kVs on here, not the 2600s. Let's have a look at how thick the arms are. I think they're 4mm thick. Yeah, so we've got some 4mm thick arms right there. So it should be fairly durable in some of the crashes, especially if you're at the field. Now there is 2 different versions of this. There is the proxy version, and I think also the racing version. Now the racing version, which is what I have here, has these arms are relatively thin, I guess, across just here, and the proxy version or the standard version is just a little bit thicker. So at least you do get 2 different options on just how strong you want your arms to be. Now the biggest thing you're probably going to notice when you're looking at this is this part on top. This is this tiny little aerodynamic sort of pod, and you do get this polycarbonate pod right here, and that is it's meant to be really, really strong. So I'm going to be interested in just how well this does hold up in a crash. It's probably going to get scratched and scuffed and all those sorts of things, but I got to say, on first impressions, I think it's actually not going to be as bad as I first thought before I put it together. So once it actually is clamped down and onto the frame, it does seem very, very rigid and very tough. Now you are going to have to do a few modifications to this polycarbonate pod. So what I've had to do, I've had to Dremel out some little parts just here, and also make some holes so you can sort of put your VTX antenna through and solder that up, and also so you can access your dip switches and or your little buttons on your VTXs. And at the front here, I know mine looks disgusting, but I've sort of done this on purpose. I sort of cut out a little bit of a hole for your FPV camera so you can see through there, but I've also instead of chipping it away, I've actually melted mine away, and I've done that on purpose so I could have that extra plastic sort of reinforcing around here, because I think if it is going to take an impact up here, I want it to be as thick as possible, because this thing is going to be going very, very quick. So it should be a little bit tougher, but it is a lot more ghastly to look at, that's for sure. Now in terms of building the thing, probably the hardest part, and something that I think people need to be wary of, is it's really not made for using an SMA connector in here. So you do need to direct solder your FPV antenna straight to your VTX. So if you're not used to that, that can be a little bit daunting when it comes to building. So it's definitely not recommended for a first time builder. And then the only other issue I really had came down to the PDB, and I actually have a spare PDB, so we're going to zoom in and have a look at this as well, because that will explain a few things in a bit more detail. Alrighty, so here's the PDB, and you can see this is exactly where your 4 arms would be bolting to. So you've got these sort of holes just here. And the biggest issue I had just here, this is a fairly simple PDB. So you've got obviously your positives on the top and also the grounds on the bottom. So that's a little bit interesting. You've got space for your LiPo battery to connect, hook up right here. This is where your naze sort of is going to sit. So these 4 holes right here, that's where your naze is going to connect. And you do get a bunch of like mounting hardware and options and those sorts of things, but mine are already all in the build. But here's where I actually had the issue. So you've got some 8 volt out actually, and then a little space for a Polulu at the front. And this is where this is what held me up. So when I first put this frame together, and I actually originally shot all this footage many months ago, I was halfway through building it and sort of talking about it, went to build it, and you've got your battery ground and an 8 volt. Now, I don't know why there's an 8 volt on here, because honestly, I just wish there was a 5. Well, there's no 5 volt. So for me at the time, I was using an SP F3 flight controller in this, and I didn't have a spare Polulu, which is really a bit of a shame, because I wish that this had a 5 volt input in here, because to me, that just seems nuts. And I know even on the latest revision of this, as far as please leave a comment down below if someone knows any different, but on both of these, there is no 5 volt output on either of the PDBs, which is crazy. I don't want an 8 volt. That's no use to me before. Like, look, it can be useful if you want to do some LEDs and stuff, but what I definitely need is a 5 volt, because so much of our technology or our tech in this hobby runs on 5 volts. So please, BoltRC, I feel like it's a bit of a massive oversight. Put a 5 volt in this PDB. We desperately need it. Now, if you're lucky enough to have one of those flight controllers like the Kahoot flight controller or something like that, they can actually take any direct voltage, but I know a lot of the flight controllers, like say if you're using an old naze or an SPF3, or a lot of the flight controllers still require a 5 volt output. So that is actually the biggest flaw I found when building this. I had no 5 volt. And I remember I contacted the guys and they said, yeah, sure, we'll send you a new PDB. We've got an updated one. So I waited about a month, and this is kind of they had the new one coming out and they sent it to me, and again it still didn't have, it had some different things, but it still didn't have a different 5 volt output, which is exactly what I needed. So then I had to wait even longer while I ordered another Polulu, and sort of that's why this build has taken so long. Anyway, let's jump back, and now we've seen this, we'll jump back and have a bit of a look at the quad a little bit more. Now, in terms of the build, some other things I did have a few little issues with is these parts right here. So where you run your motors underneath, for starters, I found this little hole on the outside where your motors are meant to come down through the arms. They were just a little bit too small, so it was sort of like, I felt like it was cutting the wires a little bit, and that's the last thing you want, is some bare wire touching the carbon. So that was a little bit sketchy, and I had originally thought maybe I could just run them across the top, but then there's no real way to sort of get them nicely underneath here and back up into your PDB, because the polycarbonate's in the way, so you can't simply go straight across. So you have to really mount them underneath, and I'm not too sure how I feel about that. I really think if you're going to have a hard prang into something, this might just cut off simply straight here with these wires underneath. So it's a little bit dicey, but thankfully if you're flying this thing, you probably are just flying it around flags and fields and some nice grass paddocks. So I can sort of let it slide, but I definitely wouldn't be recommending flying this thing anywhere near concrete or anywhere that can simply just slice these motors or these motor wires or these ESCs right off. In terms of fitting everything in here, it wasn't too hard at all, and if this is sort of the frame you're after, if you're going after this style, I definitely think you're not going to have too many issues. I've actually built some more crowded frames in the past. This one wasn't too bad, and I've simply mounted this is where my little receiver antenna is going, just on here on the outside. So overall, I'm fairly happy with how it turned out. The reason I chose this color heat shrink, because that was all we had, so that's why that's on there. So I've sort of decided to stick with the pink theme, but what we're all probably interested in is how does it perform, because once it's all built and it's actually flying around, I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised. So what we're going to do, we're going to cut out now to the field and check out how it looks, and give this thing a bit of a buzz. And there won't be any HD footage, obviously, because this thing it really doesn't have any space to mount a GoPro or anything like that. So we're just going to be getting some of our FPV footage right here. So just a little warning for that. Anyway, let's cut to the field. Alrighty, so here's some of the DVR out at the in-laws place, and look at that thing, look at that acceleration. So this thing is just insane. Like, it turns on a dime, and this is by far the quickest quad I have ever flown. And half the time when I was flying this thing around, it felt like I was barely touching the throttle. So sometimes I was really giving it to him, I guess, on these sort of straight runs, but other times when I was just sort of coasting, it still had some insane speed. So and you know what the crazy thing is it's probably watching this thing line of sight. That's when you really get a sense of just how fast this quadcopter is. Now I know I do need to sort of hollow out that screen a little bit more, or guess the FPV cover. Look at that acceleration! Like even watching this DVR back there, look at how good that is. I guess if you are taking this thing to the races and you need to turn on a dime, this is definitely the frame for you. It is absolutely crazy. And yeah, I do know I need to hollow out, like I was saying before, sort of the screen so you can see a little bit more around that outside sort of protective shell. But let's just judge this on its flight characteristics. This thing is like a whole different sort of beast. Not too sure how it goes in the durability side of things. Luckily, I didn't crash this one today. But definitely, if you are after one of the fastest races you can get, you are not going to go wrong with sticking this frame. I think any pilot would be happy to get behind sort of the props of this thing. Now for me, this is one of the first sort of aerodynamic frames that I have ever... Look at that, it looks like it's in fast forward almost. If only I was a better pilot, I could actually get a bit closer to the ground, because I feel like my pilot skills are definitely not doing this frame justice. This thing can go a lot faster than what I can push it. So yeah, this is the sort of first aerodynamic pod that I've actually kind of flown, so I'll be very, very interested to see if this is sort of the future direction that these things are going to go. But overall, the flight characteristics of this thing are totally insane. 10 out of 10 so far. Definitely the most responsive and quickest quadcopter I have ever flown. So awesome job there in terms of the performance of the frame, in terms of when it's flying. So there it is, there's my review of the K5 Kraken, and there's definitely some pros and some cons about this frame, or some things that I think should be changed. Number one, probably the thing I have the biggest issue with is maybe the price. I mean, the actual carbon that is in here is very minimal, and I know, look, there's a lot of R&D that goes into a frame as well, but you have to think you need to be a little bit competitive when it comes to the market. And BoltRC does make some awesome frames. Like I know they had a Black Ops frame that was absolutely awesome. I've seen some of my friends flying their bolts around. But I really wonder, how much does it cost to make a polycarbonate little sort of case just here, a simple, very, very simple PDB, which I did have some issues with, and then also some arms, because that's essentially what this is. So I'm not 100% sure just how much you do get for your money. In terms of flight characteristics, this thing does slice through the air, and it really is a racing frame, and you can tell that the moment you sort of spin the motors up. And I know a lot of these were at the Australian Nationals, and I also know there's some over competing in the drone world, so they're definitely a very, very high performance racing frame, so that's definitely something to consider if you're into something that's after some top speeds as well. And in saying that, that sort of doubles back to you can't put a GoPro on this, so the actual recording style, if you're planning on recording with some of these, is not going to be very easy, because this is simply about flags and fields and racing around and sort of trying to get those quality lap times. Not so much a forgiving proximity flyer, more just about taking this thing to the races and getting the quickest lap times that you can. Now, I definitely wouldn't recommend this frame to any first-time builders or people who are brand new to the hobby, because the two things, in terms of the durability of this frame, look, it's not going to be as strong as some of the other ones up here. It doesn't look like it's going to be terribly weak or anything like that, but it's definitely not going to be as robust as some of the other ones, some of the larger sort of styles of frames. And also, by having to desolder the SMA connectors in here and directly solder your VTX antennas and all those sorts of things and put them in this tiny pod, it does take quite a little bit of practice or a little bit of finesse to get it fitting just right. Anyway, I'm going to leave you with some more of this flight footage of this thing zipping around and let you make up your own mind and see how it handles. I found it handled really beautifully, and it was very, very quick slicing through the air. But subscribe for more FPV related content, and as always, happy flying!
Bad filming skills.